What's up, everyone? This is Mitch from RespectMyRegion.com, back with another episode of the RMR Podcast. We're running on back-to-back episodes today, and back-to-back episodes featuring P&W concentrate companies. I got Seth Shamberg of Fugu Farms out here in Washington. How you doing today, Seth?
I'm doing great. I really appreciate the time, my friend.
Heck yeah. I was giving you your flowers before we started. I'll give them to you publicly. You know, Fugu has been one of the hottest concentrate rosin brands in the state of Washington. You guys have absolutely exploded over the last year. I see people drooling over the products on Instagram, but a lot of the growers and a lot of my friends, I've been inside the last few years. I haven't been out with the public, but a lot of my friends are within the industry. And so a lot of people at a lot of different companies are really putting a lot of respect on your guys' name right now.
I'm stoked to hear it, man. That's really awesome. Blessed.
I kick off each one of these episodes with my guest origin story with cannabis, personally or professionally, whatever you feel vulnerable sharing. So I'm just curious, kind of, when did you get started with cannabis and kind of your journey within that?
Got it. It is a long story, and I'll try and keep it somewhat brief. I first smoked pot when I was pretty young. I think a couple weeks before my 12th birthday or something like that. In Washington State, everybody's friend or family friend or whomever is either dealing or growing pot, right? So just kind of grew up surrounded by it. I think the first plants that me and some neighborhood buddies started growing were in my buddy's grandpa's upstairs closet. When we were like 15, 16 years old, we were using boiled down molasses and ash out of the backyard. We actually... somebody may or may not have yanked a couple of ballasts from the school gymnasium, and we were growing under those for a few years. I got to try to find those pictures, but we actually did some pretty, looking back, some pretty good shit under that. I was a high school dropout, sold quite a bit of pot when I was younger, and then I, made a change to kind of try to refocus into doing something conventional. Went back to school for chemical engineering and sciences. I, don't want to talk that up too much. I didn't make it very far. I did all right, but I was yanked on by another family friend who ran a distribution company out of Snohomish to come out and work for him. It promised me a fancy sports car within a few years. Still, unfortunately, don't have my sports car, but it was a great experience. Really great guy. I walked in there when I was young. Nobody would, bat an eye at me. I think I was like 19 when I first walked in there and probably looked like I was 12. And he kind of took me under his wing. We were doing product distribution and fertilizer development down there. He taught me probably most of what I know about growing pot. The company's name was Stubers, and we were trying to do Parlux distribution. There's a bunch of unfortunate circumstances surrounding that business, and it eventually crashed. Cost everybody involved, myself included, a lot of money. But he had, at that time, had me doing, distribution underneath him as a subsidiary, as well as, back then people would come in and wait 2 hours to talk to him. And he had trained me well enough at a point where you came in and you talked to me before you ended up talking to him. This is a guy in his 70s who's been doing it forever. He had me making really good money when I was very young, early 20s. I was going out and consulting on gigs for like $150 an hour. And, was out having a lot of fun. Unfortunately, the business didn't do as well. At the time, I had another business partner who I kind of, grew up alongside. Got introduced to the guys up at the mothership glass company, and worked with them for quite a few years. He did a lot of glass, my partner, a lot of glass distribution for them. Obviously, everybody knows Mothership. They've blown up to be the premier glass company. Those guys are still great friends of mine. I go up there as often as I possibly can. They've shown me an immense amount of love and support throughout my entire journey, which I got to give them a shout out for that. Scott, Isaac, Brandon, the whole team up there. And after that, I did some work on a few, both consulting and full-time work on a few medical warehouses. Nothing really stuck, unfortunately. This industry's a hard one. I'm sure, I don't have to tell you or anybody listening to this that a lot of the people here are kind of out of their mind, and don't always stick to the agreements that are being made or, value others' time or energy. It is what it is. I've got no reservations against anybody. It's just fact of life, and where we were at in the industry. Did that through the medical days. Watched the transition into the rec market. Went to work for a couple of rec companies, helping friends, get their thing going, and same thing, trying to do some consulting. Nothing really stuck as far as a permanent home went. And then a good friend of mine kind of saw what I was going through, knew I was a hard worker, and I've always stuck to my half of deals for what it's worth. And he gave me the opportunity to come work on a family business that he had crashed because people weren't, family wasn't able to get along, make decisions together. And so I got in there, worked my butt off, for a few years, got the business turned around. They gave me half of that business, and we're still working on them with the rest of it currently. Then the landlord in that same building recognized the work that I was doing. I would help his son, give him free advice as way of improving my relationship in the building and with the landlord, as well as his son's a great guy too. I got to shout him out. Wes, you're an awesome dude. You helped me more than most people in getting this all off the ground, so thank you too. And his father had a processing license that was going up for grabs. Told me that I could start working on that, and he would draw up terms. And so, from there, I was able to get the processing side of it up and running. And on the other side, I kind of just knew that I could grow pot the way we were going about doing it in a way that created a margin, just doing wholesale work. And so that's the way it started. And I got into the processor, was able to process and do wholesale bulk rosin from there, and slowly kind of, increase the capability of the business. And then up until the point where last November, we came to retail with Fugu. And that's, like I was telling you, I consider myself immensely blessed, my team immensely blessed. We just have had a lot of great success and attention in the market. And as much as I would love to tell everybody that I think that we've got the best product in the 502 or, in the world for that matter, I try not to have that be our prerogative. We just do the best that we can in our own house. And I'll be the first to admit, nothing's ever perfect. I don't have an immense amount of money backing me on anything. So every step that we take is hard fought for me and the team. And, same thing, I got to shout out my team. I'm definitely not a one-man army as much as I, am the guy who gets to come on podcasts and talk and go out and have fun, conducting meetings and dinners with business owners and what have you. I'm blessed because I've got a hardest working crew in the game that have my back 24/7. Had COVID last week, out all week, traveling for family and weddings. The rest of the month, this month has been a complete mess. The events and everything going on, and my crew's held it down as if I never existed. So it's been awesome, man. So yeah, that's kind of the origin to date, man.
That's fire. No, and that's a great story, and it makes sense, right? I was telling you right before we started, for you guys to start in November and to begin the steam that you get. Like, people talk about how competitive cannabis is, but when you look at Washington, we're shortly behind Colorado in terms of having rec cannabis. We've had recreational cannabis 2016. The market is pretty well established, is very competitive. None of the big MSOs have looked to enter Washington because of how competitive it is. And so someone like yourself to start a craft brand this far into legalization with how competitive it is and to get the success that you guys have, I was telling you, like, that's a great achievement. But obviously, as you discussed in your origin story, there was obviously a foundation and groundwork, and maybe a couple stories of a multiple story house were built before last November.
No, I'd say so. I'm very fortunate. I've managed to create some really good relationships. The guys that work for me too. have a lot of existing great relationships as well. And so, it was kind of long anticipated as we were gearing up to go to the market, and honestly, it was still well past what my wildest dreams of what I thought we were going to be able to do when we hit. The fact that we're getting calls from retailers saying that it's first time in their store's history they've got a couple of people lining up on the day that we drop, prior to them opening, is mind blowing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just so freaking cool. It's that people care that much about getting the stuff that we produce, and I just don't want to let nobody down, man. That's why we're out here grinding and trying to, just improve every day.
I love that. What goes into, like putting rosin out, right, or any sort of concentrate? Sometimes, rosin's one of those ones where you can't mask it as much as like some other concentrates where you can have not as good an input, right? But I was just the last guest. I just told him, that slogan you hear, fire in, fire out, there's this simple equation. You put good stuff in, you have good stuff coming out. But when it comes to rosin, so you can even have good stuff and not get a good yield, or the terps don't come through when you make rosin or whatever, right? You can still have good input and not get the desired. It's not necessarily bad output, but not the desired output. What are some of those things that you feel like have to be in congruence for something to pass your test in terms of this is a strain that we want to run with more?
Right. I appreciate the question. So, like you said, it's tough because you can have good material, at the start, after a harvest, and some batches don't come out the same as others. At the end of the day, so you've got strains that produce, trichomes at different structures, right? There's a couple of tests that we have as far as testing whether the material's sticky, gritty, or greasy. We're trying to stay away from greasy material for the most part, when looking at it on the plant still. That's one telltale sign that it may not do well in the wash. And generally, if something's washing at sub 1 or 2%, it probably isn't going to press, and it's probably not going to make good product as it is. Inherently, for whatever reason that is, the trichomes just don't make good hash and then therefore good rosin. But we have a slightly more extensive set of checklists that material has to pass before it'll go out under a Fugu brand label necessarily. The material has to wash at least decently. It has to cure decently. It has to have a good profile nose and taste, and the consistency, it has to be on point. There are times where we will send out a menu to retailers and let them know, hey, we're going to have 5 grams of this, 10 grams of that come into your shop for this drop. We might have 5 strains that are on that list for that upcoming release, and we'll get to the way we do it is that menu gets sent out while things are still in cure, because as we're going to market, the days leading up to that are material coming out of cure, material getting packaged, logistics getting set, product getting delivered, and then our drop date right after that, right? And so we haven't had the final checks on the box, prior to that menu going out, for understanding that everything's going to be proper, right? And so we've definitely had, I think, at least 3 circumstances now where we pulled something out of cure and maybe it comes out dry, or the profile doesn't come in like it should, where we'll just yank that product off the menu. And with that being said, we are not perfect, and things happen. There will be jars that go out, with a potential issue or a dot, or maybe somebody doesn't get the experience that they feel they want. We try to work with the retailer at that point to do whatever we can to, make sure that we don't leave any unsatisfied customers, which I think is also a big part of hopefully why we're able to maintain the reputation we're creating right now. But we do our best to make sure that everything checks all of the boxes before going out under a Fugu label. I'd just as well sell it wholesale for people to put into joints, into edibles, into their own lines of, whatever they choose to. But we try not to let anything go out under the Fugu label or Fugu brand that doesn't check all the boxes and reach a certain standard.
Yeah, that quality control is crucial, and I like that you humbly put it's not nothing's going to be perfect because that's just the way it is. There's always going to be mistakes. I mean, I always make basketball references. Steph Curry's the greatest shooter of all time, and that man misses 6 out of 10 shots he takes. So I'm not saying you guys are missing 6 out of 10 things, but still, even the best of the best is, nobody's hitting 100% 100% of the time, and it's all about making it right to the consumer. How do you guys approach, or do you guys, when you guys do run material from certain farms, do you approach those like under your label as a collab, or do you allow other people to collab with Fugu, or do things just go out under Fugu and then you make stuff for other people as well?
Yeah, no problem. So we do toll processing for a number of brands that are out there. With that being said, and we also do a little bit of farm management as well. We have another company that kind of works as an extension of Fugu to help facilitate proper farming practices and quality control of material as it's making its way through. And some of that material does make its way to Fugu, or it may get sold, wholesale under other brands. But with that being said, we won't put out anything under the Fugu house label that wasn't processed and managed by our team, our management team effectively. With that being said, we do toll processing for other companies for their brands, but we've established the same checklist. If you want to co-brand your product with us, it needs to hit certain standards. And we're continuing to refine everything. Like I said, try to make it as perfect as possible. But, sometimes slip-ups, especially when working with, a couple of different companies and lots of moving parts, do happen. But nothing that gets co-branded doesn't go past our checklist as well. At least that's what we, try to, assure that standard. If something we toll process something and it doesn't hit those boxes, they're more than welcome to turn it out under their package if they like, but we don't allow for co-branding if that's the case. If it doesn't reach that standard.
It's got to have the standard to get the name on there.
True, right. But nothing out of the box, the Fugu Farms house box comes from any farm that isn't directly managed by our staff.
Got it. What's your guys'? I know it varies from store to store, but what's your guys' price out the door per gram?
It's $75 retail, and I know that obviously you've got discount sets, different Saturdays or regions, will give discounts. So I think it sells, a lot of places sometimes even around like 50 to 55 on the days that we drop, for the day after or something like that.
Yeah, I like to ask that because for the heads out there in other markets, that's what it's some top tier Washington is going for. I know it price varies from market to market. We're seeing some stuff in states over $100 a gram, which is pretty crazy.
And we're hoping to honestly, play around with some new products and some new SKUs, different levels of hash rosin, as well as even doing some foam melt here in the near future. That we may go a little bit up in price. Certain cultivars don't process well, don't grow easily. One notably is the Manischewitz. I'm not sure if you've had a chance to give it a try yet. We've only done one release with it in the market. It's a very unique profile. Can range from blue raspberry Jolly Ranchers to almost a wine flavor to it, grape syrup flavor to it. It seems to be one that people really enjoy, but it only yields, usually on average between 2.25% and 2.75%. The plant itself is incredibly difficult to grow. I swear it would grow like a vine and grow down off of my trays if I allowed it to. So in the future, that may be one of those very limited pieces that we alter our entry to market with, if you will. But I kind of let the guys round table that stuff and make decisions. So
yeah, and that's funny. Every grower I know has, or every brand has some product that they love, but whether they're selling flower or hash, it doesn't yield right enough to like justify allocating the space for it, or maybe like the THC percentages don't hit to where the market wants it. You know, the people that don't care about that don't care, but maybe it's not able to score on that where the market wants it. But it's like everyone has these flavors that they got under their control that for one reason or another they're unable to put out to the market. Do you have any of those that you just like absolutely love, but it's just not viable one way or another to put out on the market?
Too many of them, unfortunately. And we take pride in offering very select, profiles and unique products. So at the end of the day, it doesn't necessarily prevent us from going to market with them, and just have to work the back end to make sure that we're making enough money to stay afloat in other areas if necessary. But the lemon peel is a difficult one to grow. It can range from 3 to 4%. We do okay at 4%, 3%. It's keeping the lights on, barely. The peach flambe is another great one. We backed off pretty dramatically. And it's too bad because I'm now starting to get a really great profile out of it. And I'm sure it is something that the market will see here at one point. But it's just sub 2%. It's pretty painful to grow, and then that Manischewitz. Those are probably the three most notable currently on the list.
Yeah.
But I won't shy away from something if it's got a good profile. And I'm a smoker from by trade, I guess. So if I like it, it goes. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Figure out the money half of it on the other end.
Absolutely. I like that because I just know everybody's got at least one, and there's been a couple when I've gone to grows and sampled them, like, what happened to this? Like, man, it doesn't yield for shit. And I'm like, bro, that was the best cut of whatever I'd ever had. Like, fuck it, sell it, mark it up $5, I don't even care. I'd pay for it, man.
Yeah, totally.
And two, on that, like strains, what do you feel like are some of the trends that people in the market are really like looking for? Is it things that regardless of the name or the lineage have that unique flavor profile? Is it the hype strains? Is it like the legacy landrace strains? Like, what do you notice any trends of what kind of consumers and shops kind of cater to purchasing or hype?
I'd say it's pretty common right now. It is, as far as like the way we get orders from stores, we don't have enough product obviously to let them do a whole lot of selection at the end of the day either. But we've seen the big hype obviously around all the cookie genetics, and anything related to gelatos or sherbets or things along those lines. We found a couple of winners that come from that cloth that we are rocking and will continue to rock and put into our lineup. I know that we're now starting to see a little bit more of a wide range open up of profiles from other breeders. One that I know is becoming very popular. It has been popular, but is now becoming more mainstream, especially in Washington State. Is like the papaya, straw guava, guava Z, a lot of the Bloom Seed Co. and Oni Seed Co. Shout out to those guys; they've been doing a great job, as well as Masonic for breeding some good hashers and good really awesome unique profiles. But they're a little bit outside of your traditional cookie hyped up stuff. The landrace stuff, I think you're going to start seeing more of it, regardless of whether or not the market recognizes where these genetics are coming from or what the background to them is necessarily. There are some incredibly unique profiles coming from more of the older generation of breeders that have done really good work to find really unique varieties that come from landrace crosses, essentially. So, my opinion is I hope that the market changes to caring more about the profile and the diversity, within the genetics that, we're bringing to market versus, what came from who and the hype around, a specific set of lineage, because at the end of the day, things are going to get quite boring if we're all growing and smoking the same stuff, But I do think that is already starting to happen. The market's definitely shifted to fruitier profiles right now. And I think that they're going to, whether they realize it or not, start to enjoy some very unique profiles coming from your land race and older breeding, crowd, if you will. So.
Yeah, we got to get some of that, the old school, man, the old school back here to balance out the hype stuff a little bit.
Right.
And what, my take again as an outsider, like looking at California, because I working and moving in out a lot of different markets. Like THC chasers exist everywhere. It exists in California, I'd say almost worse than anywhere else, which is ironic because I'd also say California is like the most mature market in terms of consumers.
Right.
I feel like their palate is really mature on a wider level. But in Washington, at least like in flower, it seems like the mid shelf is where people are most THC conscious, and like our craft consumers in Washington, they don't really give a fuck. Like you'll see a lot of top shelf flower in Washington be like 17% THC and still sell out. Whereas like that would never fly in California. Do you notice something similar in rosin and the concentrate market?
I'd say in the broad concentrate market, yes. The rosin market, not so much. I'd have to agree with you on, that same perspective. Rosin's never going to get as high as BHO, right? Doesn't necessarily happen because it's alchemy. It's not chemistry. We're not chemically stripping, the THC from the plant, and terpenes as well, for that matter. Most of our clientele is, they can't even look at our products. So I was going to say they base a lot of it off of look, but you can't see, in our jars prior to purchase. But, what they are looking for, I think, primarily is when they try it, whether it's got a high THC percentage or not. Does it have a good flavor? Does it have a good nose? Does it have a good consistency? And does it get me high? You know what I mean? And different people enjoy different levels of getting, lit. So I respect that. I don't think that everything needs to like send you right off the bridge. Some working dabs aren't a bad thing.
Yeah.
But outside of rosin, I would say that's probably very commonplace with a lot of the hydrocarbon. Everything's got to hit 90-something%, or people don't want to look at it. They want a heavy bang for their buck, is what I'm guessing.
Yeah. It's interesting that, because obviously rosin fits into that upper echelon smoke. The person that smokes rosin probably smokes high quality flower as well, and like doesn't give a fuck about THC. It's more about the flavor and the high. And we all know, like, I never get a certain level of high and look at the THC percentage and be like, that's why, that's
yeah, right. No kidding, man.
That's funny. So how do you feel like what's the current state of just the 502 market in Washington? Do you feel like it's healthy? I know a lot of people, there's a lot of talk, the market's down. Personally, I've said this quite a bit of times. I think anybody that based their sales numbers off the last 2 years was fucking up out the gate, because we just had an anomaly of money financially and just situationally the last 2 years. I don't think that was an accurate forecast, but a lot of people are run for the hills. The market's down. I'm just curious, like, what are you seeing out there in the market, whether it's sales volume or just kind of consumer maturity? You think the consumer is starting to cater more to rosin, and that's becoming a wider thing? What kind of trends are you seeing in the market?
Yeah, no, I would say so. I think that as the market gets more educated, as well as even some of the lower quality rosins that are on the shelf dip in price, they can start to pick off some of the clientele that are going to the store, primarily for higher priced, hydrocarbon and live resin, further kind of depressing that market to some degree. I do believe that the market as a whole, I've had this conversation a few times in the last few weeks, is dipping down. Understandably, at the end of the day, the economy as a whole right now, as we all know, is in flux. And when, it's one thing when people are sitting at home, collecting unemployment or getting a check deposited in their bank for whatever reason, and everything's about the same price. They don't have any issue spending a little extra money or, buying a lot of smoke, right? That hasn't been an issue, obviously, in the last 2 years. But I think as we see the price of food rise and the price of gas rise significantly, people are really looking at the same paycheck differently, right? And I think we've been really lucky, the position that Fugu is in, and being able to release and sell out so quickly. I've talked to my guys about this also in the last few weeks. We're going to be very cautious in the way we scale. I think one of the worst things I could do right now is probably overscale my business, both to flood the market with product as well as overextend myself for my operation costs on a monthly basis any further with the general economic climate kind of going the way it is. I hope it turns around. I hope there's continued policy adjustment that allow us to maybe make a little bit bigger margins, but it's been a rough road for myself and for a lot of other guys, and it's probably not going to get any easier, at least for the next couple of years with the current economic climate. But I do see a little bit of reprieve. We're watching licenses go honestly at a third or less of what they were selling for a couple months ago. Licenses to produce cannabis. A big portion of that was there's been a lot of consolidation and success in the last 2 years. Massive overproduction of outdoor product last season, which is made the lower rungs of product available in the state insanely cheap, cheaper than I would ever thought could be possible. And I'm sure a huge amount of it amounts to people needing to liquidate the product that they have on hand, whether or not it's profitable to do so, needing to get out from underneath it and get out, you know what I mean? And I think that we're going to see a constant wave in this industry due to stuff like that. I think we're watching the product collapse right now on the market. I'd be willing to bet it probably will stabilize a little bit for a while. Say nationally it got descheduled, and next thing you know, all these guys are able to get big loans. You might see a lot of quick expansion in our market, and the same thing happen. It could result in overproduction and then therefore liquidation to pay back those loans that appear, and resulting in them bottoming out of the market. And I think I think our company and myself are very fortunate because we don't have a huge footprint. My operating cost isn't extremely high. I get in the garden myself. I get in the washroom myself. The crew that I have is very lean, experienced, and efficient. So we're able to operate very, very close to the gun, if you will, to make sure that we don't get priced out during that, or like I said, overproduce. So.
And being because you run your Instagram, right? Like you personally run it?
I check in on it, but no, honestly, Hunter runs the Instagram and the social media.
Okay.
Winning personality.
But so being at least somewhat overseeing Instagram and obviously being involved with the company at the level you are, what pockets or cities or areas around the state of Washington do you feel like is the most heady? Like where are the heads really centered at around the state of Washington?
God, that's a hard question, man. I'd say we got heady fools all throughout this state, man. It's pretty cool to see on people pinging in on social media, like you said. I get that where that's going now. First we just started with the I-5 corridor. Kind of operating tight to the Everett, Seattle area. A couple of outliers here and there. And funny enough, those outliers do almost as good or better than any of the inner city guys. So there are a couple of very key staple inner city stores that do impeccably well, that are known for carrying quality rosin and quality products. And those stores, move quite a bit of our material. But we've just started to make our way out to Eastern Washington, Spokane, down south towards Vancouver, and up north towards Bellingham and Blaine, and everybody kills it everywhere, man. It doesn't seem to be a shortage of guys willing to come out of the woodwork and get our product. It's awesome to see. It's really, really cool to see. But so I couldn't really focus down on an area for you, man. Not even because I'm afraid of picking favorites. I just think that we got guys from here to Pullman that enjoy good stuff. You know what I mean?
There's heads everywhere. Yeah, that's why as I asked that, I to be honest, in my mind I thought that there would be like I don't know, Tacoma or some random spot. Right. Like that's where like the most heads are at. But as you were answering that, I was thinking about flower, and I was like, I guess there are like, because like I was telling you, I'm not the biggest concentrate guy. I'm a flower guy, but even thinking of like where, you know, it's like, man, people are smoking good weed everywhere. Like, I don't know, there's always congregations and groups all over the place.
Right.
It's funny. So when did you just started expanding out to the eastern side of the state recently, you said?
Yeah, I think we just had one drop out there in Spokane and a couple of stores in between, Wenatchee, Yakima. And I know we've been catering to like Yakima a little bit, but now we're finally starting to make our way kind of across the entire state. One thing we're working on right now is doing regional drops. And reason being is I don't necessarily feel comfortable sending our product in one of the transport companies. Not to say that they, you know, have any, you know, mess ups or anything like that. I would rather it get handled under our house unless I have the ability to like truly pack the material in coolers with ice packs and disposable, you know, what have you, which I currently just, you know, I'm not at that point. So what we can do, and I also enjoy myself, Hunter, Monday, and the crew enjoy, you know, going and meeting with the bud tenders and the buyers and, you know, the owners of the companies when we go out there and make these deliveries, which is also, I think, an invaluable thing because those guys, you know, keep the world spinning for us effectively. And I can't tell them, you know, how much I appreciate how hard a lot of these guys sell our products, because if they weren't behind it, this whole thing still wouldn't exist essentially. But yeah, we're going to do regional drops in order to, without having to expand to a large delivery and fulfillment team. You know, our small team can kind of, you know, week by week make sure that we are catering our deliveries to the area and making sure that the product shows up in the state that it deserves to be for those clients, you know.
I mean, yeah, when you're looking at a product like your guys where it's really focused on the quality, that makes sense. And then also a lot of these bud tenders, I mean, I'm sure I don't got to tell you, a lot of these bud tenders are some of the people that are smoking, you know, they're smoking and enjoying this probably at the highest level, and them enjoying it and transpiring that to the consumer is what helps move it. So you've been able to build that relationship, educate them, or at least just get the feedback from them, I'm sure is just invaluable.
Oh, definitely. It's really cool, honestly, the love that all these bud tenders and buyers show, as well as owners for that matter, our product. And how excited they get when we walk in the door. I mean, it blows my mind, man, when I come through the door and I'll have, like, you know, a guy in front of me and a guy behind me making deliveries, and everybody turns and goes, "The Fugu's here," when we're coming in, man. I just, like, I once again don't like to toot our horn or nothing, but fuck, dude, it's such an awesome feeling to see that type of excitement when we come in, you know. And I love doing it. It's fulfilling as heck. It's motivating, as well as I enjoy, like I said, you know, just building relationships with those people. You know, they support us. I want them to feel like we support them as well, and that they, you know, we've got their back. With that being said, guys, I'm working really hard. I'm going to get you all swag ASAP. All right, we're getting some shirts done to start, you know, so I can get all you bud tenders laced up the way you deserve. So I really do appreciate it. Thank you. Shout out to those bud tenders and buyers, man.
That's love. That's love for them. What else does Fugu got coming out for the rest of 2022, man?
Shoot, you know, we're working diligently to expand our lineup right now with all the excitement going on. Like I said, I want to get a couple of different levels of rosin out to the people, you know, do some full melt. We've been R&D in the carts with my boy John over at Kung Fu Vapes. Appreciate the love, my friend. You know, shout out to him. We've been working with Shokan and FDG to get some gummies under the Fugu brand going as well right now. Just wrapping up R&D and submitting the recipe, I believe, with the LCB on that stuff. I just need to get the packaging finished and get it submitted, and hopefully we'll be having both vape carts and gummies, at least in the near future, you know, prior to the conclusion of this year. I also have a couple of other projects that I'm currently working on with the team. We are in the process of taking control over Green Rush and Common Roots, which is actually a hydrocarbon and flower line, as well as some pre-roll joints. And we're also going to, you know, continue to up their quality of rosin that they sell as well. So, if anybody's, purchasing products from those, price points or those SKUs, please, I encourage you to go out and try them. And if you have any feedback, send it to the Green Rush or Common Roots Instagram. I'd love to hear it. We'll probably will debut another brand as well through that company in the near future. I also have a wonderful partner of mine that is a very renowned restaurateur in Pioneer Square, owns a very famous restaurant that is working with me to, he's actually the one, who's going to be the owner of Green Rush and Common Roots, developing a very boutique and craft edible program that'll both cater to brands that we're going to create with him, some of the Fugu Farms stuff, and as well as Green Rush and Common Roots. So I'd say those are probably the big things that hopefully I'm
just a few moves, man, just a few.
And like I said, man, if it wasn't for this group, I wouldn't be out here able to conquer the world the way we have, and I, regardless of how it sounds, I am trying to keep our expansion relatively modest so that we can, continue to bring you guys the quality and craft, stuff that everybody deserves and that we enjoy bringing. So
I love that, man. And for the people out there that want more information or tap in, at Fugu Farms on Instagram, FUGU Farms on Instagram. Anything else you want to plug before I get you up out of here, Seth?
I think that's about it, man. Shout out to yourself. I really appreciate the time today. This is a very enjoyable podcast, my friend. So anytime you guys want to have me back on, just shoot me a link and I'm here. So
awesome, man. Thank you. This is the RMR Podcast, man. We'll be back with more content this week.